it'll be... Okay, so we're all sharing good now. So hi to everyone today. Want to welcome Alli Sinclair to our group. Thanks so much for joining us. For those who don't know Alli's a Australian multi-award-winning and best-selling author whose fact-based fiction explores little-known historical events. Alli's books have been voted into the top 100 Australian novels of all times, and when she's not writing novels, Alli is working on international film and TV projects as a screenwriter and producer. Alli hosts the Writers at Sea Cruise Retreat for writers, presents writing workshops internationally, and volunteers as a role model for books and homes. Her books explore history, culture, love and grief, and relationships between family, friends and lovers. She captures the romance and thrill of discovering old and new worlds and loves taking readers on a journey of discovery. And her latest book is The Code Breakers. And I've recently just finished reading it. Really, really loved it. It's good to find out about some great women of history.
Thank you. And thanks for having me along. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Would you like to tell us anything else about yourself or about your books?
Oh, gosh. I guess just with the code breakers, it's actually inspired by the real female code breakers of Brisbane in World War II. So that's been a really amazing journey for the past couple of years as I've gotten to know the real code breakers and learn about, their lives during the war and after the war. And that's really helped shape this particular story.
And how did you find out about them?
I had written a book in 2018 called Burning Fields, and my main character had worked in Brisbane in World War II for the Australian Women's Army Service. So I only kind of touched upon that in that book because it was set post-war. But I love the idea of writing about something in Brisbane in World War II. So I just Googled, Australian Women's Army Service, World War II, Brisbane. And a really tiny article popped up, and it was about Central Bureau, which was this elite intelligence organisation in Australia in World War II. I'm like, oh gosh, I never heard about this. So then down the rabbit warren I went of research, and then I found out about these female code breakers, and I couldn't believe that they existed, that we didn't know who they were, that their story hadn't been told yet. So, as a writer, it's these sorts of things are absolute treasure. So you grab hold of them while you can.
And how many of them did you find that were still alive that you were able to talk to?
Out of the 36 women, there are 3 women who are still with us, and they're all in their 90s and all sharp as tacks, amazing. And when they talk about their time in Central Bureau, it's you can just sort of see them going back to when they were 19, 20 years old, and they telling you the story like you're standing there right with them in that moment in time. I also spoke to quite a few of the male code breakers as well to get their perspective on things, and I probably found about 6 of those, but there are also a lot more male code breakers during the time, so a lot less women.
Yeah, no, that's really amazing. And was there anything when you were researching that really, really surprised you that you found out?
I would say that they were expected to keep a secret for decades. I think most of us these days would find that just an incredible thing to do, something quite difficult. But when I asked them about keeping the secret, they actually had to sign the Official Secrets Act. And because a lot of what they worked on during the war, it was actually relevant post-war as well. So those secrets had to be held, very closely to their chests. So they didn't really know how long they were going to have to hold, those secrets for. And it really wasn't until 2009 that when they got a recognition from the UK government and Bletchley Park, which is one of, so Central Bureau was an outpost of Bletchley Park, and they cracked a lot of codes there in Bletchley Park, but that was to do with the European War. Once they sort of got official recognition from the UK government and Bletchley Park, that was like, okay, cat's out of the bag, we can start talking about it now. But they couldn't tell their family or friends.
Yeah,
so
well, it was certainly a long time, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah. I know, like, sometimes if I've got something really exciting to tell and, the one person I can tell might be my husband, I can't wait till he gets home from work. I couldn't wait. Imagine waiting, 50 years.
Yeah. And the names of the people in the books, are they real names or are they names that have been made up?
Yeah, names that have been made up. Ellie is the main character. I would say she's a combination of my own imagination, but I think also heavily inspired by the women that I got to know, because I found that there were a lot of commonalities in their personalities. A lot of them came from the country. A lot of them hadn't been to Brisbane before. They certainly hadn't lived independently before. They came from really solid family backgrounds and were, I guess, what the government considered trustworthy people. So Ellie actually came to me fully formed, which is very unusual for my characters. I find I usually have, takes a while to get to know them, but Ellie, she just came onto that page and I knew who she was and what she was about. And I think that really had a lot to do with the research and actually being inspired by the real life code breakers.
Yeah.
And
could you tell us a little bit about how you got into writing? Is it something that you always thought you wanted to be a writer, or something that came a bit later to you?
Yeah, look, I was always the kid with the head in the book, being told to, put the book down at the dinner table. I used to write stories for the family to entertain them. And I never really thought I would be a writer. One stage I sort of thought about journalism, but then actually ended up becoming a graphic artist. So then in my 20s, I travelled the world a lot and I kept travel diaries and I wrote in them a lot. So I think I was always a writer, just doing different kinds of writing. And then I came back from overseas and I was being interviewed by a radio journalist, and he asked me off air about whether I'd thought about writing any books. And I'm like, oh, no. But he just planted that seed. So a few weeks later, I found myself at doing a writing course and didn't really look back after that. So it took me three manuscripts that will never see the light of day. And manuscript number 4, it was the one that got the attention of an agent and also was my first published book, Luna Tango. And, at the time I was like, I'd just be happy to see one book on the shelf, but I suppose you never get sick of, so you just want to keep doing it.
Yeah. And so your other manuscripts, had you actually tried to get them published? Or?
Oh, yeah, I had. It was over a 10-year period, so I was, I had a couple of international moves, a couple of kids, just life. So I had, over the years, gotten really close with, agents being interested and then at last minute changing their mind. But they were different kinds of books, so to what I write now. So I think it actually, it just took me a while to find out what was my kind of writing, like what I fit with best, which is, books that have, a lot of fact woven into the fiction. And I also love dual timelines. It's one of my things I really love, although the Codebreakers is just one. And that was actually a challenge because that was the first in 6 books I've ever written just having one timeline. Yeah.
And what kept you going after getting rejected for your other ones and the amount of time and everything?
I'm really pig-headed. So once I set myself a goal, it's very rare that I'll actually give up. I think a lot of it was just, to see if I could do it. I really, it was something I really wanted, and I just wasn't. I wouldn't have given. I don't know how long it would have taken for me before I decided to give up if I hadn't, been picked up by a publisher.
Yeah.
Although I suspect I probably would still be at it trying. It was definitely something I really, really wanted to do.
Yeah. And could you tell us a little bit about your films and TV? What sort of things have you been involved in with that?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I was involved in a short film called Trust Frank, which was heaps of fun to do. And I was just kind of part of the crew that sort of floated around and worked a bit in different departments, especially continuity. So making sure that, if we're filming a scene that, if the cup is in the middle of the table and we all have a break or whatever, and then we come back, then I've got to make sure that the cup is still in the middle of the table, which is great for a person like me because I'm really nitpicky for all those tiny little details. So it suits me, that kind of thing. And that film's actually gone on to win a lot of amazing international awards. So that was really a great entrance into working in the film industry. And before that, I spent a bit of time on the set of Wentworth. Okay. So my last book, The Cinema at Starlight Creek, my main character is a location assistant or a location manager for a TV series. So I really needed to understand what all that was about and how it worked, and especially what it was like on a set. So I was really lucky. So a friend's relative worked on Wentworth and was able to sort of get me on set so I could actually spend a bit of time there and ask all the different crew their different jobs and how it all worked. And that just really just sparked a fire in me, and I loved it so much. So the last couple of years working on a documentary about our code breakers and also writing some film scripts and some TV scripts as well. And I've been working with a couple of producers and yes, it's a little bit watch this space at the moment. We've got some things happening, but can't say anything yet.
So it sounds like you're very busy. You've got a lot of things going on. How do you make time for your writing?
Yeah, I get really protective about my writing time. Luckily, I mean, I've got 2 kids in high school now, so that's a lot easier to be able to do that. So I do write full time. So while they're at school, I've got that, 9 to 3 window. And then if I'm on a really tight deadline, then, I will then get back at the desk after dinner, while the kids are settling down and whatnot. So, I found like even before I was writing full time that I would just carve out my time and say to the family, right, Sunday from 2 till 5, that's it. I'm in my office. Do not disturb me unless someone's broken bone or bleeding profusely. Otherwise, don't want to hear about it. So, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of writers do have issues with, or not issues, but challenges with, is actually getting that uninterrupted time. Because sometimes you're writing a scene and you're totally in the flow, and then someone comes in and wants to talk to you, and then you've lost that flow, and it can take another hour to get it back. So it's going to be quite a challenge for sure.
And we've got quite a few people watching, which is great. Just reminding
Hi, everyone.
people, if you have any questions, to type them in comments. Mary said it's amazing about Wentworth, and she wonders if you enjoyed the original Prisoner as well.
I was quite young when the original Prisoner was around, and I wasn't allowed to watch it at home. So, but I always got sneak peeks. So what I saw, I liked. I haven't actually gone and watched the original, but it could be quite interesting to compare.
Yeah. I remember watching a little bit of it when I was younger.
Yeah. Such rebels.
And I'm interested to know what you enjoy reading yourself, and maybe if there's anything you've read lately that you'd like to recommend to us.
Oh gosh, yeah. I love to read across the board. I do read a lot of non-fiction books, usually for research. I've got another project that I'm starting on. I've got like about pile of seven non-fiction books at the moment that I need to tackle. But for leisure, I'm a huge Belinda Alexandra fan. I adore her books. Whenever there's a new release, I'm like down the shops trying to get a copy for sure. And I've also just read Kanina May's new one, which is really fantastic. And Aussie authors basically as well. You know, I will quite happily read any Aussie author. I think there's really something distinct in the way we tell stories. So even if it's an historical author or someone who writes contemporary, I think there's still something really honest in the Aussie voice. And I really love reading Aussie authors. I've actually been published over in Germany with a couple of my books, and I had a long chat with with my publisher over there, and because I noticed that they had a lot of Aussie authors on their list. And they just said, Germans tend to really love Australian authors. They do.
Yeah. So are all of your novels set in Australia?
No, the first three. So let me think. Lunar Tango is Argentina. Under the Spanish Stars is Spain. Beneath Parisian Skies is France. Burning Fields is partly set in Australia in 1948 and 1943 Italy. And then The Cinema at Starlight Creek is partly set in the 90s in Queensland and also 1950s Hollywood. And then The Codebreakers is set all in Australia.
Okay.
But yeah,
so quite a variety.
Pardon?
Quite a big variety.
Yeah. Although the last three books, the bits that are set in Australia are all in Queensland.
Okay.
So, and people often ask me, they're like, do you want to be in Queensland? I'm like, yeah, I love Queensland. But you know what? When it's July in southern Victoria where I am, and I'm freezing and I'm writing about someone walking through the sugarcane fields, just all of a sudden the room feels a little bit warmer.
So, and do you visit all the places that you've written about?
Yeah, I used to live in Argentina.
Okay.
So I actually sort of say Lunar Tango is my love letter to Argentina. So I've been really lucky. I've traveled quite extensively. And I do think that my travels and my interest in a lot of other cultures kind of fuels the stories that I write, for sure. And yes, absolutely. And even with my research, with the Codebreakers, so the women worked in the garage behind the back of a mansion in a very posh property in Brisbane. So I actually got to go and visit this property in Ascot, and it was really great, like just to be able to walk in the footsteps of these men and women and just imagine what it could have been like there was absolutely amazing. And it really does help bring authenticity to a story for sure.
Yeah. And it seems like you do a lot of research for your books. On average, how long does it take you to research and write your book?
Depends on the book. I would say on average 6 to 8 months of research and just outlining the story and getting a feel for it. But the Codebreakers was way more intense. That one nearly broke me. So much research. I'd say probably a good 2 years worth of research.
Wow.
I mean, obviously I was doing other things as well, but it was pretty intense with the research. I've probably spoke to over 100 people with different backgrounds and experiences. Like I got to speak to a gentleman who was a Central Bureau historian, and he actually used to be in charge of the Australian Signals Directorate. And so Central Bureau actually was the precursor to the Australian Signals Directorate, which is our, cybersecurity agency that we have now. So it was really great to get his perspective. I spoke to Signals University professors at the University of New South Wales, Qantas historians, historians for the Royal Flying Doctor Service. So all these elements that are in the Codebreakers, I've spoken to experts or people who've lived through those times, so I can pull it all together. Yeah.
Okay. And Are you able to tell us anything about what you're working on at the moment?
Yep, working on my next book called The Vintage Teacup Society.
Okay,
So that's got,
sounds
yeah,
interesting.
it's got 3 timelines. So that one's been really fun. So I'm doing quite a lot of research about teacups and the various forms, and because some people prefer china, other people prefer iron, other people prefer pottery.
Mm,
But so it's really interesting learning about the history and how it sort of has developed throughout the world throughout time, and also learning about different blends and how it can have effect on people as well. So but if there's anyone out there who's really into teacups, I've got a Facebook page called the Vintage Teacup Society, and it's fantastic because people then
oh,
post photos of their teacups and
okay.
their favourite teapots, and we all have teacup
Oh,
envy,
I'll have
and
to have a look. I've got
it's
some of my great grandmother's teacups.
fantastic. Well, come on
I'll have to
over,
have a
because
look. Yeah.
people are telling me all about their
Mm,
stories. Like there was one the other day, and it was their grandmother had received this tea set for her 20th birthday, and it's just, I love it, and I think that's one of the things I love teacups so much, is that there's so much history there, and a lot of it we don't know about. So,
mm,
and that's one of the things that I sort of explore in that
mm.
story.
So that was
Yeah,
was that the Vintage Teacup Society, is that right?
yeah,
Okay,
yes,
I'm
that's it.
just joining it now.
Fabulous, excellent. Welcome, one and all. Yeah, and then I'm doing a couple of screenplays for a couple of feature films that I'm working on at the moment,
Mm,
and also our documentary. We're going into filming that. So once we've got all the footage, I'll then end up writing the script for that as well.
mm,
So
okay.
lots of different things.
Yeah, lots of
Doesn't be
things going
boring.
on, it sounds like. And I also read in your bio is it Books and Homes?
Mm.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, look, they're a fabulous organisation. They've been around for a while, and what they do is, I mean, they're big believers in literacy, which I'm sure everyone watching is as well. And so what they do is they go to different schools over, say, a 1 year period, and they meet with the kids and just try and find out what kind of stories they like and that sort of thing. So, but it's usually in kids in really remote areas, or, may not have a lot of advantages that other kids might have. And so what they do is they give the kids a list of books. So the kids get to choose, say, 2 or 3 books every term.
Mm,
And the books are delivered by an author who they have book giving assemblies. Now virtual most of the time,
mm,
unfortunately. But
mm,
so the author comes along, does a bit of a chat, kids can ask questions, and then they have a book giving assembly. And so the kids then actually have those books, and they're theirs, and they can take them home and they can keep them. And there's been a lot of studies that, if there are books in the home, the kids' literacy tends to improve quite greatly,
mm,
and then the family gets involved, and all of a sudden, they're able to read a lot better. So they do this program usually over a year. Sometimes they might return to the same school, but the whole point of the program is to engage kids in reading and get them to find a
mm,
love for reading.
yeah.
And if they love reading, then they're obviously going to learn, and their English skills will improve greatly. So it's a
Mm,
really awesome program. It's backed by some pretty big name authors, actually. So if you
yeah.
go onto their website, you'll be able to see all their role models and what
Mm.
they do.
Yeah, sounds great. Um,
Yeah.
Mary's wondering, with the research you did for Code Breakers, did you find that some of them are still living, after all these years, are still living with trauma from that time?
Yeah, it's really interesting. When I went to write the Code Breakers, I originally thought I would just set it in World War Two.
Mm,
But then I got to know the real life code breakers, and it was really interesting talking to them to find out how they dealt with the whole secret keeping business.
mm,
So some coped really well, some just kind of said, okay, well, I've made this commitment, so I'll just have to just get on with my life. Other people didn't cope very well with it, found it really difficult because they felt that it drove a wedge between their family and their friends, and they could never really fully give themselves over. And then, there was a story of another lady who went overseas, and she initially went for she was engaged, went for 6 months, and then extended to 6 years. And her fiance waited for her, and returned,
so
and then they
she
got
went
married.
overseas for her work.
Oh well, she went overseas because she just wanted to remove herself.
Oh, okay.
From,
And he
I
just
think,
waited.
just from the whole past, and just to be able to just start fresh. So everyone has had a whole lot of different experiences in that regard. And that was really interesting to explore, and then also, for my characters, then, find out how they coped as well. So. And also, I think a lot of the women, because they had really important jobs and they had become independent, and it was the same for a lot of women working during the war, that afterwards, when the men returned and took the jobs, which of course they needed as well to cope, because there was, no support there at all for people suffering, that the women kind of felt useless. They handled some of the biggest secrets that that Australia ever had, and then they were sort of relegated to just being an everyday person, and that was really difficult for a lot of the women, especially with Alli, my main character. She was lost. She kind of was just walking in circles for quite a while, going, well, what now?
And with ideas for future novels and that, are you someone who has a big long list of things you want to write in the future, or do you just concentrate on what you've got and
Oh no, there's always that bright, shiny new idea vying for attention. Always. So I think the ideas come relatively easy. It's the writing it that's the hard part for me. I've got the Vintage Teacup Society next, and then I've got another book which I really want to write, but that's going to take a long time to research this particular one. And then there's another book I had it'd be one of those ideas that had just been nagging me. So I find if I just sit down and just write the synopsis, then it's like it's out, it's there, it's on a paper, or on my computer, and then I can just put it aside and pull it out later. Sometimes I don't think I'll ever pull some of my ideas out later. They'll just forever just stay gathering dust. But there was one idea I probably wrote about 3 or 4 years ago, and now it's actually gained a bit of interest for the screen industry. So I'm like, okay, I'm quite happy to pull that idea out. But yeah, I've always got lots of ideas floating around, and not all of them are good. Or they might be good, but not good enough for a book. So maybe a short story.
Yeah. Mary's wondering if you have any other writer friends that you get support from, or you support them.
Oh yeah, that's one of the things I love about being a writer is the friendships. I've got 3 really close writer friends, and we probably text each other every day. Phone calls when we're taking the dog for a walk and those sorts of things. So we're definitely each other's sounding boards. Interestingly enough, we all write very different genres.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is quite fascinating. That like a friend of mine, she writes African thrillers. I've not been to. I had been to Africa, but right up north. But she's lived and breathed it. But she'll bounce ideas off me because I am a little bit removed from that particular genre, that I've got different perspectives on it. And vice versa. So having that support network is really, really important, because this industry has a lot of ups and downs. More ups usually, but the downs are pretty crappy too. So you need to have that friend who gets it. Like other friends and family, sure, they can understand if you're upset or if you're happy about something. but a lot of the time, I guess the significance is lost if you're not in that particular industry. So that's where it's really important to have writer friends, because we just like get each other.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
do you have any tips you could give someone who was looking to start being a historical fiction writer?
Yeah, read.
Mm,
That is the number one thing for sure. Um, reading across the board, not even just historical fiction, maybe just reading some contemporary as well, and just having a look at, you know, whether there's a particular character that you engage with or one that you didn't engage with. That's also really important as well. And if you find you're reading along and your mind's drifting and think, well, okay, why isn't this scene working? Like, why have I been lost in this scene? So just doing a little bit of analysing as you go, but also connecting with other writers as well. There's a lot of fantastic writing organisations around. Every state has a writing organisation. So where I am, it's Writers Victoria. And then there's also the Romance Writers of Australia. You don't have to be a romance writer to join them. They welcome writers from anywhere and of any experience. But it's just a really great chance to connect with other like-minded people as well. But probably the number one tip I would say, well, number two, read is number one. Number two, I would say, is to write what you love. Write the story that you would love to read, because you're going to spend a lot of time with those characters and that story. So you have to really want to be with them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's really important.
Yeah, thanks for that advice. Talking about characters as well, do you have a favorite character out of all of your books?
Oh, that's the favourite child question. Oh, gosh. Well, I know for readers, my last book, everyone tended to like Lena Lee. She's my Hollywood actress. And I actually had some amazing book reviewers. So Happy Valley Books Read, and they actually named their calf Lena Lee.
Oh.
And she had a little love heart.
Oh.
Very cute. Oh gosh. If I narrow it down to just one book, so out of the Codebreakers, I think my favourite character there would be Mrs. Hanley. Mrs. Hanley runs the boarding house where my main character lives, and she's the mother to everyone. She takes in the strays on Sundays. So she's lost a couple of boys during the war, and so she doesn't want any of the troops that are in Brisbane to, feel like they don't have family nearby or go without a home-cooked meal. So every Sunday she likes to bring in a stray, one of the soldiers, and just give them a touch of home. And she's just so giving to everybody else, even though she suffered a whole lot of traumas herself. But I think her giving actually is what keeps her going. Yeah, she's a good egg, Mrs. Hanley. Everyone needs a Mrs. Hanley in their life.
And could you tell us, for you, what makes a good story?
Oh, I really need to connect with the characters.
Yeah.
And I need to feel that there's a depth to them. That there's a humanity to them. So, not all of us are always good all the time. And even the bad guys in stories are not always bad. Like there's a reason for why they act the way they do. So I think being able to understand the characters and their motivations, and understanding, what makes them tick, helps us to get that depth of character so that we can connect with them. We don't necessarily have to like them. I've read some books where the characters are really horrible, but I'm fascinated with them. I'm just like, I just want to find out, why they're doing and saying the things that they are. And that's clever, very, very clever writing, I must say, to be able to write a book with an unlikable character and still have the readers turning the page. That's really clever. Yeah.
And what about reviews? Do you read your reviews?
I do. Getting told not to, but especially when the book first comes out. The code breakers, I was especially nervous because so much of my heart and soul went into this story because I know the real, the real code breakers, and I really, really wanted to do their story justice, and I really wanted readers to connect with them and go on that journey with them. So I was especially nervous, and I was, reading the reviews. But I will say probably the reviews that counted the most were actually the review from my co-breakers. So I gave them
I
a
was
copy
wondering about,
before it was released, and wanted their feedback. And I was very nervous. So when their name popped up on my phone, I'd be like, hello. And thankfully they loved it. But yes, to me that was obviously the best review I could get their blessing. But it is I know authors shouldn't read them, but sometimes you just need a bit of a bolster. And then occasionally you see one of them, it's like, okay, actually I wish I hadn't read that one. But it's just it's part of the roller coaster. So yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. Would you like to tell people how they can keep in touch with you? And like, if we look on any of your website or one of your pages, can we find more information about the code breakers, or see photos,
well,
or
actually, So I just actually just if you want to find out a little bit more information about the code breakers, I suggest watching the project. Very soon. We've actually got the ladies. We've done an interview with them. It should, I believe, it's on this week. But maybe just keep an eye out. But on my webpage, you've got all my books there. There's contact forms, so if you want to email me and ask me any questions or something, that's fine. I love hearing from readers. Absolutely love it. And I do have a blog, which is a little bit sporadic at the moment, but any of the big stuff I put on there. But I do also have a newsletter, and I always any news or giveaways and whatnot, I tend to put that in the newsletter first. So if you want to be the first to know, you can sign up there. But I'm always hanging out on Facebook, and you can usually tell when I'm under deadline because I'm on Facebook more than I should be.
Well, thanks for joining us, and thanks everyone who's joined in and watched us, and thanks for the questions that came through. So bye everybody.
Thanks everyone, and thanks Jackie.
Bye.
Bye.